Ikdisha Isasa. A woman consecrated her dough. She made it hektish, achlo gilgala, before she kneaded the dough. Uptayasa, and then before she kneaded it, she redeemed it. Chayevet, so she has to take off challah when she needs it, because at the time she needs it, it's no longer hektish anymore. So therefore, she has to take off challah. No two ways about it. Ikdisha achlo gilgala. She made it hektish and redeemed it all before needing it. Okay? However, if she made hektish before she needed it, v'gilgula gizbar, and then the treasure of hektish actually needed the dough, and then she redeemed it after the treasure of hektish had done it. Petura, then she's exempt on challah. Why is that? At the time when the determining time, the critical time when it was being needed, was being done. Petura was exempt because it was done by hektish. Kayotibo, similarly, Hamaktiv Shapiros, if somebody who consecrates his fruit, Achlo Bolonas Maestras, before they become susceptible to the obligation to be tithe, Uptoyan, and then you redeem them, Chayot, before the obligation devolves upon them, Chayovin, they are liable, of course, to be tithe, because they weren't in the domain of hektish at the critical point. Mishabolanas Meiser, once they reached the point of Meiser, and once they reached the point of Meiser, they were under the jurisdiction of Hekdesh Updon, and then only subsequently redeemed them, Chayavin, they are liable for Meiser. Hikdish Nachalo Nigmeru, also, therefore, if you consecrated them before they were completed, and then Gemara and Gizbar, the Gizbar completed them, and then you redeem them, Peturim, then they are exempt, because Shebishas Chavas, at the time when the obligation devolves upon them, Peturim, they were exempt. Now, what are we talking about here? What is the obligation? What is the time in which you're obligated to set aside Meiser? When is that point of obligation? Do you remember? When you smooth the pile. But there's another time, which is when it grows to a third.
Oh, that's right.
There are two times which are critical in Meiser. A, that at the time that grows to the size of a third, it's in the hands of a Jew. And B, that when you smooth the pile, it's in the hand of the Jew. And the Gemara is going to pick up on that now. We just started when the Gemara the Gemara right after Halacha Gimel. Lama Tanisa Trey Zimnin. Why do we have two Mishnayos that say the same thing? One is in Peah and one is here. They seem to say the same thing. So Rabbi Chuna and Rabbi Chia, Rabbi Shimon Levi all said b'shem Rabbi Toya, named Rabbi Toya, Achas l'miruach v'achas l'shlish. Because there are two critical times in the lifetime of something being chayv and meiser. One is when the pile is smooth, and one is when it grows to the size of a third. So at both of those junctures, it's got to be in the hands of a Jew and not in the hands of Hekdesh in order to be liable for Maisris. Okay? Rabbi Yossi Amar, Rabbi Ba v'Chevraya. And continuing along these lines, Rabbi Yossi said that Rabbi Ba and Chevraya, Rabbi Ba and the Chevra in the base Medrash discussed this matter. The Chevraya said, as we just in fact said, one of these Mishnayos, which exempts Meiser, if at the time of exempts a crop from Meiser, if at the time the obligation for Meiser devolves, it's in the hands of Hekdesh. One then pertains to Miruach, to the smoothing of the pile, Vachash L'shish, and the other pertains to when it grows to the size of a third. Rabbi Ba Mifaresh, which is which? Rabbi Ba Mifaresh, Rabbi Ba explained, L'chala l'miruach. Our Mishnah is talking about when the pile gets smooth. In other words, that point it cannot be in the time of Hekdesh. Why is that? Because why is our well? Let me finish the sentence. And Peah and the Mishnah in Peah, which says that at a certain time it cannot be in the hands of Hekdesh, that's referring to when it goes to the third. That at that point it cannot be in the hands of Hekdesh. Well, how does he know that our Mishnah is talking about Miruach? Because our Mishnah draws a parallel between Challah and Meiser. And challah, of course, only devolves, the obligation to take off challah only devolves at the very end of the process, right, when you're fully kneading the dough. So to the other thing which is mentioned in our Mishnah, which is that at the time of Meiser, it should not be in the hands of Hekdesh, it should be in the hands of a regular Jewish person. That also must be talking at the time when it comes to the end of the process, which means by fruit and vegetables and anything other than grain at the time of Miruach. Okay? Says more furthermore, Umasnisa, our Mishnah is Rabbi Akiva. Our Mishnah is Rabbi Akiva. The Rabbi Akiva said, Acha Shlish, now here's a big typo, Acha Shlish Rishon it should be. After the first Shlish at Malach, you go after the first third. In other words, Rabbi Akiva holds, we had this back in Masechta Maasros. We had Masechta Maasros where the Machlokas Akiva Rabbanan. Rabbi Akiva holds, once a third has grown in the jurisdiction of a non-Jew, can never become Chayiv Maasros again. That's it. It's exempt for all time. Rabbanan hold, if the last, let's say, 5/8 grew in the hands of a Jew, so proportionally 5/8 of the grain is chayiv and trumas and maasros. They hold it's proportionate. So that Mishnah in Peo, which says that if a third grows, if the point of a third is reached when the grain is under the jurisdiction of Hekdesh, then you are potter for all time. That's clearly going like Rabbi Akiva. Because like Rabbana, when you get it back and it grows proportionally in your domain, you're chayav proportionally on whatever grows in your domain. Okay? So that's what Gemara says here. That Masnisa Rabbi Akiva, the Rabbi Akiva Amar Rabbi Akiva said, Achashlish, again it should be Harishon ad Malach, you follow the first third. These Spalgan goes, you have a machlokas about this, as I just told you, Sadashivya Shlish Livnei Goy. A field which grew to a third of its growth under the jurisdiction of a non-Jew. So and then subsequently a Jew took hold of it. Rabbi Akiva Mer Tosefes Pot, or Rabbi Akiva says the additional growth is exempt. Rabbi Chacham say the additional growth is chayav proportionally as it grows. Maikadun, how do you judge this man? In other words, how do you learn our Mishnah? Tipater, you explain it. Oh, like we just said with Rabbi Akiva, that our Mishnah, or actually the Mishnah in Peah, which exempts if it grows to a third in the hands of a goy, it's either going like Rabbi Akiva, who said subsequently there is no chiyuv which can be affixed to it, or it should be here. Rabbi Akiva, I'm sorry. Rabbi Akiva, the next word is also a typo. Rabbi Akiva bito sefes, not b'machlokas, but bito sefes, and that all the additional growth is exempt. O kedivrei hakol, or it may well be going even kohen rabbanon, but in a case where immediately after it grows to a third, b'koitzer miyad, you cut it down. So that way there's no additional proportional growth which can be ascribed to a Jew, that there should be anything which a Jew should be chayiv to give. Okay, halacha dalet. Masnisin. Nachri shenas al Yisrael isa. A guy who gave a Jew a dough, lasoslo, to make for him p'tura min hachala. It's part of the challah. So you have, let's say, a Jew is working in a non-Jewish bakery, doesn't have to take off challah. Right? It's obvious. If, however, the guy gives the Jew the dough as a gift, if it's before the kneading, so chayeves, then the Jew's kneading makes it chayev. If he gives the gift after the kneading, Petura remains exempt. What if you are a shooter for, let's say you own a Dunkin' Donuts together with a guy, right? You make a dough together with the guy. If they're in the portion of the Jew, there is no shiur of challah, meaning that together the entire dough is less than double the amount of shiur challah, right? So each one of you, so the Jew owns less than a shiur. Termina challah, it's exempt. Gershon is gayer, a guy who became Jewish. Vaisalo Isa. I ever tell you? I must have told you. Rabbi Yosef Engel's medayik. For everywhere to the chat it says Gershon is gayer. What do you mean? So Gershon is gayer, not a Gershon is gayer. So from here is medayik that everybody who becomes a ger really had a Jewish neshama. It was just dormant till now, because he has a chakira wet. Because a ger only become a Jew mikano lahaba, or is mikano lahaba l'mafreya. But the Goy Milsim afraid that he had a Jewish neshama. So he's medayik from the fact that it always says Gershon is Geyer, that he really was always Jewish inside. Okay? I don't know why it came to mind right now. But anyway, Gershon is Geyer. Vaislo Esau, a ger became a ger and he had a dough. Ima Nasi Sachaloni is Geyer. If the dough was made before he became a ger, obviously potter, it's exempt. Because at the time when the obligation should devolve, it could not devolve. Umishnu is Geyer, if however he needed the dough after he became a ger, Chayev. What im suffik? What if while he was in the mikveh they were kneading his dough? They were having a Suda after he was Megaya, right? So they were kneading the dough for the Suda. They don't know if they needed it when he was before he went to the water, after he came out of the water. They don't know. Chayiv. The suffix is chayiv. However, since it's a suffix, if a zar, a non-Kohen eats it, so it doesn't have to pay a fifth like it would normally have to pay. Very interesting thing that as long as it's megayer before it forms a crust in the oven, even if it's after the kneading of the dough, it's still chayiv take of challah. You take challah from the loaf when it comes out of the oven, he's still chayiv and challah. The shas chiv has not expired until such time as it forms the crust in the oven. Okay?
It's a similar scenario of a woman that was pregnant and as she's in the mikvah, she's giving birth.
Yeah, something like that. We had something like that. Right. Similar idea. But there it wasn't as bad. He wasn't kneading the dough in the mikvah necessarily.
She's giving birth in the mikvah.
Okay, Ma Veino Isa Sarnona. This is a very interesting question we're asked. What's the difference between this and the dough for quartering soldiers? I don't know if it's quartering soldiers really, or quartering soldiers. Remember that we revolted against the British because they were quartering soldiers. Everybody remember their American history?
Yes, but
yes.
I think with the Romans, it wasn't that they had to quarter them; they had to pay them for their lodging.
Well, here they had to make them bread. Here they actually had to make them bread. So the thing is, you own the bread, but who you're being compelled? You own the dough, but you're being compelled to feed it to a goy. You are in mechuyev in this case to take off challah from the dough which you're kneading for them. So ask Gemara, Lisa Sarnona. What's it between the case where you're kneading dough which belongs to a guy and the case where you're kneading dough for the soldiers you're quartering? Shema ena chayeves b'challah. Is it not chayev in challah over there? So why not in our Mishnah? So the Gemara rejects that. Of course, the Gemara says no comparison. Tamon Birshus Yisraelu. There, by the quartering of the soldiers, the Jew is making the dough on his own. Maybe the guy will change his mind and not take it. And then who owns it? The Jew owns it, right? But here, L'daito Itluya, is it up to the Yisrael to decide to keep it to himself? Obviously isn't, because it's the guy's dough. So therefore here it's exempt altogether. Tiny Rabbi Yehuda said, taught us, Malai Shel Yisrael, the merchandise belongs to a Jew. Upalin Goyim, the workers are Goyim. Upalin Goyim Osim L'socho, they're working with the merchandise here, being specifically the dough. Chai B'challah. So if you have, as very often is the case, you have a Jewish bakery, not Jewish workers, you have to take off challah nonetheless. Okay? Malai shel goy, vice versa. Let's say you have a breadsmith where it belongs to a goy. You even have Jewish workers working there. Patim in a challah is exempt from challah because ultimately it belongs to the goy. Rabbi Yossi says that's our Mishnah. We also in our Mishnah. A guy who gave a Jew to make for him a dough, betura mina challah. It's exempt from challah. It's explicit, right? Rabbi Bun Bar Chia, Kumi Rabbi Zira, asked in front of Rabbi Zicha. Afilu sheyesh b'shel Yisrael shiur. Now this is going to the next case in our Mishnah, really, not in the case we were just discussing. We said in our Mishnah, if the Jews if a Jew and a Goy have a partnership in a dough, we said so really has to have double the amount of the shiur in order to be chayiv and challah, because each one is half. Now, Rabbi Zira asked for Rabbi Zira, even if he owns enough to make it a shiur. It's a fascinating question. I'm amazed by the question, but the question is, it's almost that picture, but not quite. That's okay, I can use this. His question is like this. Let's say they both don't have, but let's say the half of the Jew is like this. And then the goys is in the middle. So in that case, the two halves of the Jew are not joined together. So why is the Jew chayiv and challah? Even if he owns the amount, but it's not they're not joined together. That's the word kasha. Let's say it's a measure over here, a measure over here, in other words, half a measure on each side, and the full measure to go in the middle, so they don't have in any one spot enough to make it chayiv and challah. Amalei Rabbi Zira responded to him, Veina mura v'ayidei gidin. You don't think it's mixed together by strands? Now, strands, very interesting language. Lashon, I don't know what he means by strands. What he means is that the dough is kneaded, right? So if it's kneaded, there's no way that this is not linked in some way, shape, or form to over there. And you don't need, like that case, a beitza of link in the middle, right? That's for Tumah and Tara to transmit Tumah across. But in order to make it one dough for challah, it can just be connected by a filament. It doesn't be connected by something significant. So therefore, the odds are overwhelming that in this case there's going to be some connection through the non-Jew's dough that's going to make it chayiv and challah. What? As what?
Is it the same thing? Braiding?
Well, here you didn't here even if you, at the time before you braided it, but it's still in the dough. So we're saying because that's the point when you take off the challah.
I don't think it's dependent on time, but not necessarily the shape.
No, granted, it's not. We're talking about the question is whether there's some scenario. His question is a funny question. His question was hypothetically there should be some scenario we could conceive of in which the Jew's part should not be considered connected and should be exempt from challah, even though there's a shiur, because the goy is a hefsek, an interruption. So he's saying there's no such scenario because ultimately it's all connected. Okay, Talmud today we looked over there about Zroa L'chaim and Keva. Remember what Zroa L'chaim and Keva are?
Then the payment, then you don't say that I borrow.
If I translate, you'll remember. Zroa is the arm, L'chaim is the cheeks, and the Keva is the stomach. Who gets it? From what?
From cow.
A cow? A cow which is shechted where?
So on my way, so now let's just say that in the temple?
No, outside the temple. Anything said, what does the Kohen get from things which are shechted inside the temple? No, not everything. From Shlomi.
Oh, from Shlomi.
Yeah. The chaz of a shok. You remember what that is? The chest and the thigh. Right. Okay, the Zohar Chaim and Keva are what he gets from a regular animal. Okay? After Chazar Chulin, another 5 years. Okay, Talmud today we learned over there Gershon is Gayer, a ger who was Megayer, V'oisla Pora, and he had a cow which is being shechted again. To say they're breaking his bread in one place and they're slaughtering his cow in another place. It's a big suitor getting prepared here. Gershon is Gayer, V'oisla Pora, he has a cow which is being slaughtered. Actually, his Gayer, if the cow was slaughtered for him before he was Megayer, before he became Jewish butter, it's an example giving the Zroa L'chaim and Keva to the Kohen. Mish's guy shechted after his Megayer, so Chayiv has to give Zroa L'chaim and Keva to the Kohen. V'im Safek, if it's a Safek when it was shechted, right, it was in the mikveh at the time, potter. He doesn't have to give it all because the Kohen has to prove that he actually deserves it. That in other words, at the time of slaughter, the guy was already Jewish, the owner of the cow. Oh, that's what I was going to ask. You're asking good. So it says Taman Atomar in that mission, that case over there by the Zorah Chaim Cave, he said Safek, when in doubt Pati, you don't have to give. But here by Chala Atomar, he said when in doubt Safek Chayiv, here Safek you do have to give. So how do we reconcile two cases? Rabbi Yaakov says, he tafsukumi Rabbi Yami. I asked this question from Yami, V'amar, and he said to me, a very interesting answer. He said, Mi Omar Li, who would tell me, now here's a typo, should be, instead of Shu, it should be She'eno. Nota Domina Shevet. Who says by Chala he doesn't get paid by the Kohen? Don't think he's got to give the Chala to the Kohen for free. He can demand payment from the Kohen for giving him the Chala. So the obvious question is, the Gemara is going to ask it. I don't have to ask it myself. But first, when it says Rabbi Yaakov Bar Zabdi and Rabbi Chia b'Shem Rabbi Lezer said, "No tu domino shevet." That is in fact the case. Although you give the challah here, you can charge the kohen for the challah. So it says the Gemara, if that's the case, still v'yarfish. This is the obvious question I was referring to. V'yarfish tamon. So over there also separate v'ito domino shevet. In other words, give the coin Zrol Chaim and Keva and charge him for it. Why is it not consistent? Why over here do I say give the coin the Chal and charge for him, and I do not say that over there? So it says more, I'll tell you why. Rabbi Yossi said Chala, by Chala she eat tevel. If you don't take Chala off a dough, can you eat the dough? No, it's tevel. Uvav and mitzvah, if you eat it, you get killed by God, right? So therefore, in by Chala we're more stringent. In order to avoid that prohibition, mafresh, you separate the Chala, and here's a typo, it should be v'yito, not v'lo yito, but v'yito, and yito dam min hashevet, and you get the money paid back to you from the priestly tribe. There it should be. Now here it should be also as a typo. It should be Hasam al Shem, Hasam there, not just al Shem, but Hasam there al Shem amotzi v'chaver levaraya. There, if you don't give Zerol Chaim and Kevel, you can still eat the cow, right? As we do today, we don't give Zerol Chaim and Kevel, we eat it anyway. So therefore, there we don't have to. There's no need to separate it. Here, you're compelled to separate it in order to not transgress the prohibition of tevel. Once you separate it, you give to the coin, but you're allowed to charge a coin for it because he doesn't know if he actually deserves getting it as a gift. Over there, you don't have to bother separating it because it's not tevel. Hi, the coin wants it, let him prove that it's coming to him. Otherwise, you have no obligation to separate it.
Can he sell it to the coin? The same way that he's selling it.
Yeah, but he has no obligation to. He has no obligation to, because I'm also Chaver Lovaraya. Let the guy prove it's coming to him. Amrai Bum Barachir, Shnei Goyim, two Goyim, Shasu Shnei Kabin, who made 2 times the shiur. No, they made the shiur. Shnei Kabin means the shiur in this case. It's not exact. Obviously, Shnei Kabin is not the shiur. The shiur is Far Chamesh Revoim. But we're using this we're just using the numbers randomly. The mean is they have a shiur together. Now they divided. Now they added on to each other. Now what's not clear here is that they were Megayer. It doesn't say they're Megayer, but obviously they were, because otherwise the whole Shayla doesn't start. Now there's another point here, another important introductory point. Rabbi Yochanan holds, we had it before, but we all forgot it by now. Rabbi Yochanan holds that when you make a dough, even if it's quite large, but your intent is to divide it up, we had this by the Nachdom in the first parak. If you make a large dough, but your intent is to divide it up eventually, so then it's exempt from Challah. Why? Because the end result is that it's going to be little batches, even though now it's a big batch. We said that's not true by baker, because by baker, he might sell the whole thing to one person if he gets one person who wants to buy the whole thing. But generally speaking, by a person, private individual, he makes one dough with the intent of splitting up, it's exempt. Okay? So now, these two goyim originally had this dough together. Okay, they had this dough together, and was together and had a shiur of challah. So hypothetically, it should be potter at that point because you kneaded a dough together. But they always intended to split it up. So therefore, it really was exempt from challah. It wasn't chayiv in challah. So again, shnei goyim shasu shnei kabin v'choku, and then they split it up, and then they were megayer. They became Jewish. And now each one built up his portion to the point where it's the sufficient size to make challah. Chayovin. So now the chayiv to take off challah. Why? Shaloi solem shas choiva v'nifteru. They never had a time, we're on top of Yud Chesem and Alf now. They never had a time when they were obligated and therefore obligated as goyim and therefore exempt. Why? Because at the beginning, when it was so significant enough size, their intent was to divide it up. So therefore, that point was not a shas chiyuv. Wasn't a time when they could have become obligated. So therefore, there's never any point of obligation reached at the time that they're non-Jews, which would continue to exempt them once they became Jewish. Okay? That doesn't matter. That would have exempted them, though. No, then they would have exempted even when they became Jewish. Because there was a shas chiyuv, a time when the obligation could have devolved and did not devolve. So that would have exempted them permanently. Okay?
I can't remember when everybody brings it back to the baker.
It's exempt because everybody takes back their own part. Okay? So, now, let's talk about Jews. Shnei Yisraelim shasu shnei kabin. 2 Jews who made in partnership a sufficient shiur, the choku, and they intended to split up, and they did split up. And now they each one added on. So each one had a half measure now, and each one had to make it a full measure. In this case, Peturim. They're exempt from giving challah. Why? They had a time when they could have been suitable to be obliged, when they were partners and they got together. But at that time they were exempted because they had in mind to divide it up. So therefore they remain, that half which each one gets, remains exempt. And then even if you tack on another half to that half, your first half still remains exempt, and therefore you will not be chayiv to take off challah. Okay? It's a good loophole, right? Yeah. Okay? But it's still not going to be a good loophole for a large amount of dough, because then even if you split it up, you're probably going to be left with enough dough to make a shiur anyway. Yisrael v'goy shasu shnei kabin. Now here's a little bit complicated case. A Jew and a goy were partners. They had a shiur. The choku. They divide up. And now they divide. They added each one to the other, to his own. Of course, the goy was megayer at this point, right? The chelik of the goy Jew is chayiv because he never had a time when he could have been chayiv previously, when he could have been exempt, right? Because the goy on the other half, right? Chelko shel goy mo. What about the part of the goy, which the part of the goy is considered to have a shas chiyuv when he was the partner with the Jew, and therefore does remain chayav later? Does remain? Does he become potter later on or not? Okay, that's the question of the Gemara. So now the Gemara has a lot of typos in these next 2 lines, actually 2 to be exact. Klum. This is the way to read it. Klum chelko shel Yisrael chayav. Let's analyze this. Why is the portion of the Jew chayav? Lo machmas chelko shel goy is not because of the portion of the goy. Now this is a very complicated thing. What it means is like this: that why is the Jew's portion chayav now? Because originally when he had the partnership with the goy, so that wasn't considered to be a time of obligation. Because although they had a shiur together and they intended to divide it up at that time, nonetheless it's not considered to be a proper shiur because the goy's portion was really not chayiv. Goy's portion is not chayiv. So therefore, it's not a shas chiyuv, and later on, when the Yisrael adds on to his half, another half, that becomes the first shas chiyuv. That's under the jurisdiction of a Jew, it's chayiv. right? So since the chelik of the Yisrael is chayiv because the chelik of the goy is attached to it, so therefore, continuing further in the Gemara, chelko shel Yisrael chayiv. You want the chelik of the Yisrael to be chayiv and the chelik of the goy to be potter? No, it's got to be reflexive. If the Jews put dough never had a shas kosher, well, never had a shas chiyuv, it never had a time of obligation, because at the time that it reached originally 5/4, it was together with the non-Jews chelik, and they intended to divide it up, and that's why later on, when Yisrael gets to add on to it, to make it a full portion of its own, it is chayiv and challah, because that's the first shas chiyuv. So it stands to reason that the goy's dough must reflect that status as well. And therefore, even though the goy was joined together with the Yisrael at the beginning, that's meaningless. And therefore, later on, when the goy converts and he adds on, so then he also becomes chayiv and challah as well. Okay? So basically, the goy's dough has to reflect Yisrael's dough's din as well.
So it's ironic that the goy, once he converts, is more higher for his portion, while the Jew...
No, they're both chayiv here. That's the point. It's amigo. Since the Jew is chayiv, that's where the goy has to be chayiv. The Jew is chayiv because even though originally, that's the point. Since there was no shas chiyuv with the goy, so therefore later on when he adds on, that becomes the initial shas chiyuv, and then he's chayiv. So our question was, yes, but what about the goy, right? His original dough, originally before he converted, right? So as far as he was concerned, there's no halacha. So maybe now it's considered to be that it reached far. Though it's by a Jew, there's halacha that where you make it almanas l'chalek, that's not considered to be a shas chiyuv, right? But maybe by goy, we're saying there's no such halacha. So originally, when they made it in partnership together, so maybe that was considered for him as shas chiyuv, and therefore he remains exempt even once he's a mekayer. And that would say no. The fact that the Yisrael is chayav later on indicates that there was never prior shas chiyuv, and therefore the goy's dough also, once he becomes Jewish and taxed on another half, it is chayav and challah as well. Okay. Rabbi Akiva, now actually we have one of these rare cases in the Yerushalmi which has a header. You appreciate when you have Gemara's like that, when they don't have a kavanaki. What a wonderful service the kavanaki did by providing you with headers. Okay, Rabbi Akiva Omer, Hakol. What? Never should Gemara right. That's why, because he wanted to be parsimonious on the headers, so he split out the Mishnah. Rabbi Akiva Omer, Hakol echachar krima b'tanur. Everything goes by the time when it forms a crust in the oven. Chevraya b'shem Rabbi Lezer said, the Chevra has said the name Rabbi Lezer. Mod Rabbi Akiva l'chachomim. Rabbi Akiva concedes the point to the rabbis, bisas hedyot, at the time in the dough of a common individual, that shegilgula tibula, that when it's become tevel, when it's what? When it's needed. Yeah. What is one second.
What? Okay. What's overcoming? So you can't give me
Oh yeah, okay. I forgot. Yeah, I just forgot. What it means is like this. It's a little bit more complicated. It seems at face value. What it means is that what happens by hektish. If I'm makdish a dough, hektish needs it. Then I get it back, I redeem for hektish, and then I bake it. Rabbi Akiva concedes there that I remain exempt from challah. It's only in this case, in our Mishnah, of a guy who's a guy who's becoming Jewish, that his shas chiyuv can still be chayiv up to the point that it forms a crust in the oven. He draws the distinction between a dough which belonged to a hedyot, to a commoner, was given to hektish and then bought back again, and in the case of a goy who became Jewish in midstream. That's the distinction. Why is that? Because there's a logic to that. Because by the case where the Jew owns it, it was susceptible already to challah at the time of kneading. It didn't become susceptible then because it was in the hands of Hekdesh. It therefore retains its exemption for all eternity. By a guy who needed it when he was still not Jewish. So at that point it wasn't that susceptible to Challah, that it should become exempt. It can still become susceptible later on, therefore, whereas when he's Megayer, as long as it hasn't yet formed a crust in the oven. And therefore, at that point, in fact, he becomes Chayiv in Challah. Do you see that? When he's Jewish, and then it goes potentially Chayiv. So we go after the first point at which it becomes Chayiv, and if it wasn't Chayiv then, it can become Chayiv afterwards. But he's not Jewish, and it can't become Chayiv now. So then we go after the last point when it can become chayiv, which is the moment before it forms a crust in the oven. At that point, if it's already Jewish, it becomes chayiv in challah. Okay? So again, Rabbi Hillel B'Shem Eliezer says, "Moder akiv l'chachomim b'isas hek." Okay, right? No, it's going further. Wait, let me go back to the two dots again. Rabbi B'Shem Eliezer said, "Moder akiv l'chachomim b'isas hedyot," by a commoner's dough, shegilgula tibula, that the kneading of the dough is what makes it tevel. Rabbi Hillel B'Shem Rabbi Eliezer, top of Yud Chesed base now. Rabbi Hillel B'Shem Rabbi Eliezer says, "Mod Rabbi Akiva Katzitz L'Chachomim B'Isas Hekdesh," by the dough of Hekdesh. This is a logical sense of what we just said. That when the dough goes to Hekdesh, Shekigula Paitra, right? That the kneading in the hands of Hekdesh what exempts it from Challah. Rakahana Mar. Now, what does Rav Kahana say? Because Rav Kahana says differently, it seems. Divi Rabbi Akiva, according to Rabbi Akiva, Ein miruach poiter b'makom hekdesh. Now, the Gemara is going to pick up in a few lines about the fact that Rav Kahana switches the discussion from Gilgul to miruach. But right now, the Gemara doesn't make anything of that distinction. All the Gemara knows is that Rav Kahana says that when the miruach occurs in the hands of Hekdesh, you might say it exempts the fruit from ever becoming chayiv and meiser. So Rav Kahana, it'll become chayiv and meiser later on when the Yisrael gets it back. Okay, when the Yisrael gets it back, then it's going to become chayiv in meiser from that point. Okay, Rabbi Yehuda said, again, not drawing distinction between the two, between the use of miruach on the part of Rav Kahana and the use of Gilgul on the part of Rabbi Eliezer. So Rabbi Yehuda looks at it at face value. How did the Kahana, the same in Meber Rav Kahana, plead Rabbi Eliezer, argues Rabbi Eliezer, right? They seem to argue with each other, right? Because one says it remains part, and one says it becomes chayiv later on. Says Marmanda Mar Gilgul Poter. Again, this is all Rabbi Yehuda speaking. He says that Gilgul, the rolling of the dough, exempts. If that's done in the hands of Hekdesh, it exempts from Challah. He should also hold on Miruach Poter. He shows that when the Hekdesh smooths out the pile of fruit or grain or whatever it is, that should also exempt you. Umad Damar Ein Gilgul Poter. He who says that the kneading in the hands of Hekdesh does not exempt you from Challah. Ein Miruach Poter. The smoothing of the pile also does not exempt you. So it must be that Rabbi Eliezer and Rav Kahana argue. In any event, however, Kirabonin, like the rabbis, Gilgul Poiter B'Shus HaGoy, when the Goy does Gilgul, needs the dough, so that exempts from Challah. Now, Ve'ein HaMiruach Poiter B'Shus HaGoy. The miruach does not exempt if it's done in the Rishus HaGoy. In other words, if the fruit smoothing pile does not. The kasher rabban says, "More that's difficult though. How can it be? That seems to be inconsistent. If a Gilgul Poiter B'Rishus HaGoy, if the kneading in the hands of a goy exempts from Challah, so then ain't a miruach Poiter B'Rishus HaGoy. You're going to say that the smoothing pile in the hands of a goy does not exempt from meiser? What's the distinction?" Says Gemara now, special Gzeres HaKosef, Shan Yohi, it's different. To see, because it says, V'cho Masar Horetz Mizera Oretz. It says v'chol. I should have emphasized v'chol. All meiser. What does all meiser mean? Even if the miruach was in hands of a goy, in the hands of hektish, you would do hands of hektish. If later on a Jew acquired it, becomes chayv and meiser. Because the chol, v'hacha, answer word. So what? So by chal it doesn't say leis chsiv milech mar. It doesn't also say from the bread of the land. It says more yes, milechem but below kol lechem, not all bread. So therefore, there's exeris because of the word kol. Mr. Zucker, still some left. The miruach of a goy doesn't exempt because of the special cause of v'chol. So therefore, even after the miruach was done in the hands of a goy, later on, it can still be chayiv when it reaches the hands of Yisrael. By, however, challah, once the gilgul was done in the hands of a goy, according to Rabbanan, who argue in Rabbi Akiva, that's it. There's no later stage in which it could be chayiv and challah, because it doesn't say kol, it just says lechem oretz. Okay. No such thing as till it becomes crusted in the oven. Now, I'm Rabbi Chanina, brother of Hillel. Rabbi Chanina, son of Hillel, said, "Minador the Rabbanan." From that which the Rabbanan, that way, the way we reconcile the rabbis, Ono Yofin, we learn from this, the late Sador the Kahana, Pliga Rabbi Lezer. That Rabbi Kahana and Rabbi Lezer don't necessarily have to argue. What did Rav Kahana say? Rav Kahana said in Rabbi Akiva that miruach of hektish doesn't exempt. Whereas Rabbi Lezer said gilgul of hektish exempts. And we thought that's a machlokas. But now it's no longer a machlokas. Why? Because miruach of hektish doesn't exempt. Why? Because of the word v'chol. Whereas gilgul of hektish does exempt challah, because by challah there's no inclusion of the word v'chol. That's what Gemara is about to say. Okay, says Maram Rabbi China Breda of Hillel, Minat the Rabbanan, from the way we reconcile the rabbis, on Yofin, we learn the Leis Adad the Kana pleaded Rabbi Lezer. That which Rav Kana said is not that which Rabbi Lezer said. I don't know. Just a scholarship already here. I don't know why Rav Kahana in the Yerushalmi is not called Rav Kahana. The Bavli, of course, is called Rav Kahana, but Yerushalmi is not called Rav Kahana. Perhaps because they didn't like him because he was a Babylonian. I don't know. Rav Kahana came. Warren Bamitzir says he killed somebody, a guy in Chutz La'aretz, and therefore he had to flee to Eretz Yisrael. And then he sat in front of Rabbi Yochanan, and then he had a split lip or with a cleft palate or something. And Rabbi Yochanan thought he was laughing, mocking him in the shiur, and he died, and Rabbi Yochanan brought him back to life. It's the whole episode there. So, could be Rav Kahana was not held in high esteem because he was a Babylonian, even though he was a tremendous lamdan. I don't know. But the bottom line is that he's not called Rav Kahana in the Yerushalmi. Because in the Eretz Yerushalmi, they had true, in Eretz Yisrael, they had true smicha. In Bava, they just had the Yori Yad and Yadin, which wasn't real smicha. But we'll see later on, Rav Huna appears today we'll still see. Rav Huna appears in the Yerushalmi as Rav Huna, and not as Huna. So, yeah.
Allowed us to keep the shiur.
Even Yeruach was done by a goy, right?
But now, aren't we saying that with respect to the distinction for hektish between Meruch and Gilgul, we're saying that hektish could still be that there still could be a big tumor?
No. Even Miruach was done by hektish. It's still chayiv afterwards, right? When a Jew takes it back over, so it is consistent. Okay, again, let's start from two dots again. I'm a Chanir Breder of Hillel. Minatod the Rabban, and the way we explain the rabbis. On Yofim, we learned the late Sador the Kana pleaded Rabbi Lezer. But that which Rav Kana said does not argue Rabbi Lezer. Kamad Rabban and Amri, just like where the rabbis say, Gilgul Paita B'Shus HaGoy, that needing by a goy exempts from Challah, even though Ein Amiruach Paita B'Shus HaGoy, even though a smoothing a pile done by a goy is not exempt from challah because of the xeris hakosuf of kuvechol. Kain Rabbi Akiva, so to Rabbi Akiva, Omer will say Do you have the word ein in parentheses? Okay, it should be parentheses. It should be erased, as a matter of fact. Kiva Omer, Gilgul Pater, the rolling patters, Birshus, and here it should be hektish instead of goy. Gilgul Pater Birshus hektish, right? That the kneading of the dough Birshus of hektish exempt, whereas the smoothing of the pile does not exempt in the Birshus of hektish, again, because we have the extra word bechol. Okay? Says the Mishnah further. Haloche. This is a thing we had several times already in Masechta Challah. If you make the dough out of wheat and of rice. So normally rice is exempt from Challah. But if the power of the wheat to rise or cause the fermentation of the rice to be considered as rising as well, and therefore as long as it has a taste of grain, chayevis, it's liable to the obligation of challah. Furthermore, now the Mishnah goes really with a tremendous chiddush and says, even though it's mostly rice, you're yotzi chiv on Pesach with it. Why? Because it has the taste of grain. It has the taste of grain. So the impact of the grain is so strong that it makes you yotzi on Pesach with it. It's an amazing concept. Well, everybody was Sephardi back then. I mean, there was no Isra to eat rice. That was much later. It's a European phenomenon. Okay? Remain batam dogon. If it doesn't have the taste of grain, it's not chayev in challah. Person can't be yotzi Pesach with it either. It doesn't have taste of grain. Even though it has trace amounts of grain, it's not sufficient. Hanoitel sor. Now this halacha, I'm telling you, the rest of the Mishnah, I can only understand if we hold true our day and ages to Rabbanon, which we do. It is. Otherwise, the whole thing is unintelligible to me. Hanoitel sor. I mean, I understand the words, and you will too, but you'll see the svara only makes sense if we say true and zmanazes to Rabbanon. Hanoitel sor mi'isa shlorim achalosa. You take dough from sourdough, from a dough which has not yet had challah lifted. Now, what do you use sourdough for? I know you know. To ferment more bread, right? In breadsmith, they have a special cache of sourdough which they started in Milwaukee in the 80s, and they still use that in order to ferment their bread. So, must be very sour, yeah. Well, their dough is not very sour, yeah. So it's sour. Yeah, sourdough is a fermentation agent. Now, so you took from the sourdough. It's not edible, by the way. Sour is not edible. Sourdough is not edible. Torah says chametz and sour and Pesach. Sour is an inedible commodity, but it's also because it's the catalyst for fermentation. Okay, sourdough bread is just a little bit of sourdough which caused the fermentation. It's not primarily sour. I see you and you knew that. The way you're shaking on your head, but you didn't, right? Okay, but we have in Psachim, right? Psachim, yeah. Right, it says there that I might have thought only sour is also, right? Because I might have thought only chametz also because it's edible, not sour. And the Gemara, when it learns why the Torah say both chametz and sour also in Pesach, right? So it is brought down in the Bible. That's right. So noitel sour, you took sourdough from a dough for which the challah never been taken. And you use it as a starter in a dough from which challah has been taken for fermentation. So how do you take off the challah now? How do you take off challah and the sourdough? It's all mixed in, right? It's obviously it's not discernible. How do you take off challah from it? So it says the Mishnah, if you have more sourdough, literally means a living, but here it means if you have a solution to take sourdough from somewhere else, might be cheshbon. So you say, I put in 5 ounces of sourdough. I will now take from this sourdough a proportional amount for challah on the sourdough which are already put in to the other dough. Okay, is that clear? So I go externally to find a solution. What if you don't have the lav? If not, so then motzi challah sakasakol. This is a very interesting thing that the Mishnah says. This is what I think while you work in Truma's Rabban. He says you take off from one truma from one challah from the entire mixture, which includes both the sourdough, which didn't have challah taken off, and the regular dough from which had challah taken off. You take off one portion of that, and that you designate as challah. Now watch that work. It would seem that it's quite possible that the stuff you're taking up as challah right now actually contains none of the sourdough, right? Because it wasn't mixed in completely. It's quite likely it wasn't mixed in proportionately. So why should this work? So he brings down, the reason why it works is because since from Erie brings this down, since Tevel forbids a dough b'mashu, why is that? Because it's davar sheshim something can be rectified. So everyone else is a dough b'mashu, so it's considered now as if this whole dough is Tevel. And therefore, whatever you take off works as challah. Which is a very difficult svara. Really very difficult, right? Because the fact that it asks bekoshu doesn't change the entire dough into tevel. The heter, which is the majority, is not batel to the isser, which is a very small minority. Yet it seems like the Meiri is learning that way, which is very difficult. I don't know, but that's what he says. So I think the only reason where it works is Shuma and Chalab is not as Rabbanan. So they make and says it's good enough. You consider this as if Yitaka hit the proper proportion of what you're supposed to take in your handful. But I have another alternative explaining not like the Miri, which is that since sourdough, promise won't work with yen in the Mishnah. But at this point in the Mishnah, one could say, since sourdough is a catalyst which impacts on the entire dough, so therefore the entire dough is now considered proportionally to have sourdough, components therein. It seems more reasonable, but it's not going to work out. It seems really great, but it's not going to work out because the next case. Look at the next case. Kayotzibo. Similarly, they say Masik. Olives which are harvested in normal fashion. Which got mixed in with Zaysenikov with olives which are harvested by poor people. So the poor people's olives are exempt from Trumas Maisus, right? The olives which are exempt, because like a Shechampeah, these are the ones which are left on the stem. But the olives which are harvested in normal fashion are chayv in Trumas Maisus. Or in Veibatim, normally harvested grapes. In Veolos, the grapes which are harvested by poor people and therefore exempt from Trumas Maisus as well. If you can take grapes or olives from somewhere else, then take from them the truma proportionally based on the amount which got mixed in. However, if mixed in unidentifiably, and you have no place else to use as your frame of reference to take trumas from maisros, so then moitzi trumas maiser l'kol. You take of truma and trumas maiser, which corresponds to the entire mixture. Now here, there's no concept of sourdough sending fermentation throughout the dough, right? We're talking about grapes. We're talking about any type of fruit. So that's why my second summary before doesn't hold any water, even though it was very nice. But here, what do? You take of truma and trumas meiser as if the entire thing is tevel, even though you know it's not. But you take of truma and trumas meiser as if the entire thing is tevel. However, basically because we fine you for having done this, so we make you take off more trumas meiser than you normally should. So why we make you take off this the more trumas meiser you normally should? Because it's chiyuv misa, and therefore it's more severe. However, meiser lakol. V'shar meiser sheni. The rest of the meiser rishon and the meiser sheni l'fi cheshbon, now you don't have to take off on the entire mixture, but only proportionally based on what you originally had in the batch. Now, he points out, the Levi Yerushalmi points out the name of the Rosh and the Bartanur, that this in fact is not quite 100% accurate. You can't do that. If you had to take true, say you had, let's make it, you had 1 bushel of grapes which are chayiv and Trumas Meiser, which got mixed up in 2 bushels of grapes which are not. So now you have to take off Truma and Trumas Meiser based on the 3 bushels. But the only way you can get Trumas Meiser for 3 bushels is you take off Meiser on 3 bushels. Because Trumas Meiser is 1/10 of the 10th. So how can the Mishnah say the Meiser you only have to take off on the 1 bushel which got mixed in? You have the Trumas Meiser to take off on the 3 bushels. That's a paradox. You can't have Trumas Meiser on 3 bushels unless you took a Meiser on 3 bushels. So what does it mean? So the Levi Yerushalmi explains what it means is, of course you have to take off Meiser on all 3 bushels, but you get to keep 2 of those. What do you have to give to the Levi? Only the amount of Meiser corresponding to 1 bushel. Why is that? Because since that was all your chayiv in Meiser, so therefore that's all we make you give to the Levi as Meiser. Although we make you take off Meiser from all 3 bushels, corresponding to all 3 bushels, in order to finally find you more severely, in order to make you give 3 times the amount of Truma, and 3 times the amount of Truma's Meiser, which you would have had to give otherwise to the Kohanim. We don't find it when it comes to Meiser, which is a lighter commodity, and there we let you keep 2 out of the 3, even though you separated 3, for yourself. Okay? I hope that's relatively clear.
After reading the arrow here.
Okay, we find you on the Truma and Trumas Meiser. The Meiser you have to set aside proportionally in order to provide that Truma and Trumas Meiser, but you don't have to give that entire amount to the Kohen. To the Levi, only the amount which corresponds to what you should really have to give. Okay? You take sourdough from wheat. And you put it into a rice dough. So if it gives a taste of grain, so then you have to take off challah. Why? Because now, though, like we said in the beginning of the Mishnah, now it receives the parameter, the definition of wheat dough.
It doesn't seem to matter proportion at all.
Just Tom, but that's going to be a big machlokus in the Gemara. You're right, doesn't seem to matter. Gemara's going to discuss that. The lavin, if not p'tur min ha'chal, it's exam ha'chal if it doesn't have the top. You can't lomar amruat tevel oser koshu. So if that's the case, why do we say that tevel asers, no matter how infinitesimally small the shear is? We should always go by taste, right? Says more if that's mean b'mino. Where it's mean b'mino, so then we go by mashu. The speck of tevel falls into the same type, right? A grape into 1,000,000 grapes, it asers in mashu. Koshu. However, shalobamino, when it's not in the same type, such as wheat into white rice, then we follow the parameters of noisinta. Okay? Says more. Masnisa the low krabban of Shingamliel. Our Mishnah like Rav Shingamliel. The Shingamliel, the rate safe of our Mishnah, which you just learned, which you just pointed out. Our Mishnah like Rav Shingamliel. The Shingamliel says, it's not chayav challah, ad sheba dogan kashir. It's got to not just have the taste of grain, it's got to have 5/4 of grain in it. Okay? Rabbi Yaakov Redim, Rabbi Shimon Lakish, New Testament Aleph, Halach Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, Halach is like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel in this respect. So it has to have the shear of wheat folded into the rice. Rabbi Hila said, Bank Rabbi Noach, whether it's like the rabbis in the land of Israel, or the rabbis in Babylon, Amrin, they both said, not like our Mishnah, and not like Shimon Gamliel. You have to have a majority of grain and the taste of grain. It's got to be both. Okay? So it's not like our Mishnah. Ravuna Amar Taima Doga, Ravuna argues, Ravuna says as long as you have the taste of grain, Aval Pisha and Ruba Dogan, even if it's not in the majority, it's not yet grain. Masnisa Pliga Ravuna, Lichora Mishnah argues in Ravuna. The Brisa, the following Brisa, argues in Ravuna. The Brisa says, Ire Bashar Minim, if you mixed other stuff into with wheat, achi heibo, it's not chayiv nechala unless it has ruba dogon v'taima dogon. You have to have both the taste and the majority wheat. So it's a kasher avuna because you see you need actual physical majority wheat. So pasar law, so he explained b'minim achirim. That's different. If you have rice with wheat alone, then all you need, says Rav Huna, is the taste of the taste of wheat, because rice and wheat bond. If you have wheat with many other types of grains, rice, corn, hops, chveis, so in that case you need specifically to have a majority of wheat. Okay? So Rav Huna says, I also need a majority of wheat, not in correlation to rice, when you have other things other than the rice involved. Okay? Masisa pliga Rabbi Hila. Rabbi Hila said in Amud Aleph that both Rabbanan, all the rabbis say you need rov dogon, majority of grain. So our Mishnah argues with Rabbi Hila, because our Mishnah says, Hanaitel sorm isa schitin, if you take dough, you take just sourdough from the wheat, from sourdough made of wheat. You put it into a rice dough. If it's got the taste of grain, or even the taste without the rov, without the majority. It's chayim mechala. V'ila petura, and if not, it's exempt. So that seems to argue on Rabbi Hila, right? So says the Gemara, no. It's no. Really, you need a majority of grain in order to be chayiv in the challah. What is our Mishnah talking about? Our Mishnah talking about something else. Begin nisnei, since he wanted to say the basra, what we said subsequently in our Mishnah, hatevel oser koshu min b'mino, that the tevel forbids and the smallest speck, that which is similar in type, v'shelo mina menositam, and if it's not in the same type, then it goes by taste. So here, in the previous case, we also mentioned that sourdough in rice goes by taste. That's because we wanted the two cases to flow together. But in fact, in sourdough in rice, although it's not mentioned, you also need a physical majority of grain. Okay? So since the theme of the end of the Mishnah is tam, that's why it focused on tam. But it did not mean to preclude that you also need a physical majority as well. That's the way Rav Hila learns our Mishnah. Okay? Is that clear? Okay? So by the way, look, right? It's really taking the Mishnah out of context in order to explain it. Okay? But that's okay, because we said that that's the sheet of Rabbanan and Talmud. That's the sheet of the Babylonian rabbis. So that's how they have to explain our Mishnah. Okay? Now here's a typo also, it should be Rabbi Yoina. Rabbi Yoina have a misbech Rabbi Zira. Rabbi Yoina was supporting Rabbi Zira. Rabbi Yoina was younger, I guess. Rabbi Zira was older. And Shama Kloid Rabbi Hila. They heard the voice of Rabbi Hila. Yosef was sitting in Masni and learning over. Rabbi Yochanan, the Rabbi Yochanan said, Taima dogon, if it has the taste of grain, alpha pishin, ruba dogon, even though it doesn't have physical majority of grain. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yochanan said that's Rabbi Yochanan. One opinion named Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yochanan said, Rabbi Yosef said, Rabbi Yochanan, you need both. Ad sheruba dogan v'tayim dogan, you need both physical majority and a taste of grain. Amar, so he said, so Rabbi Zira just gave us the following point of information. It's the opposite in my hands. Siman havolon, we had a siman, a sign, meaning in this case a tradition, the Rabbi Yossi Hozek Rav Huna. Rabbi Yossi Hozek Rav Huna, meaning that you don't need a majority of grain, all you need is that it should actually have the taste of grain, that suffices. Okay, we'll stop here for this evening.
What do we know about
brand called Team Cheerios.
Yeah, multi-grain Cheerios.
It does combine well, apparently.
Combines well.
Because you're saying that you're
They're only rice and yeah. Okay. We don't know. Corn is no raya though, because corn is now they make cereals with corn and grain, but they didn't have corn, so it could be corn combined with everything. Okay, what says black? Yeah, what's 6:15? What says black? No. That's not it. I think we're well ahead at this point. Today's Aleph Adar. Yeah. Oh, today, right, that's right. Today's Vilna is Tez Zion. And we're at Yud Tes. So.